Time now to bring you through what's in today's newspapers, and for that I'm joined by Alison Sargent. Hi Alison.
Hi Stephen.
Let's start with reactions to some of those first announcements out of COP26.
Well, papers in India are hailing the announcement that the country plans to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2070. Now, the Times of India notes that while that is 20 years short of the 2050 deadline that's being pushed as the target at COP26, well, it still marks the first time that India has ever set a net zero goal at all. And so according to the paper, it's being broadly welcomed as a significant step. Meanwhile, The Guardian is focusing on that deal to halt and reverse deforestation over the next decade. The paper notes that Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro is among the leaders who are making that commitment. And that is notable since Jair Bolsonaro has overseen a major increase in deforestation in the Amazon. Now, with that in mind, there's another article in The Guardian that caught my eye this morning. Climate activists are warning not to trust what they call Brazil's greenwashing. They warn that the Brazilian government may make empty promises at the COP in order to access conservation money. And because of that, they also say that strict checks are needed to ensure that any money given to Brazil goes where it is supposed to. Now, Bolsonaro's reputation as an anti-environmentalist does seem pretty well, solidly in place. That's demonstrated by this cartoon by Carlos Latouf for the paper Brazil de Fato. It shows the parking lot of the COP26, and these diplomats are saying, guess which one is the Brazilian delegation? And I think you can guess, Stephen, that it is that logging truck full of trees that have been cut down from the Amazon.
And that brings us neatly to some of the more cynical reactions to what's being discussed and announced in Glasgow.
Yeah, and some of them are cheap shots, hypocrisies that are pointed out at pretty much every COP summit. Italian paper Il Fatto Quotidiano is one of many pointing out that the world leaders traveled to the climate summit on airplanes, which of course are huge emitters of CO2. Their headline here, to save the climate, they took their 400 jets. This next cartoon, meanwhile, by New Zealand cartoonist Tom Scott, is a little bit more creative, I think. It shows that an astronaut on the International Space Station is alarmed by a big spike in hot air over Glasgow. His fellow astronaut offers the explanation. That'll be world leaders at COP26 promising more action on climate change.
Meanwhile, also at COP26, away from the climate issues, there's also been a problem to do with accessibility.
That's right. Israel's energy minister, who uses a wheelchair, says that she was unable to attend COP26 events on Monday because she wasn't able to access the venue. We read in The Independent that Karine El-Harar said that the only way to get to the grounds of the conference was by walking or taking a shuttle that was not wheelchair accessible. She tweeted, "It is sad that the UN, which promotes accessibility for people with disabilities, in 2021 does not provide accessibility to its events." Now, The Independent writes that they approached COP26 for comment, but it doesn't seem that organizers have given one yet. It is amazing to think, though, that of the thousands of people attending that summit, not a single one of them has mobility issues. Otherwise, how could they go? So hopefully the organizers can figure out what went wrong in this case.
Moving to a different story here being covered by the French papers and a very different kind of summit, and it's that of French bishops.
That's right. And this annual Assembly of French Bishops comes just a month after a landmark report was released about sexual abuse in France's Catholic Church. Catholic paper La Croix writes that this annual bishops' meeting is an opportunity for them to make progress in considering reforms in leadership that the French Catholic Church clearly needs. Now, according to Libération, French Catholics really hope to see more of a response. The paper cites a poll that found that 85% of French Catholics say that they're angry, 69% say they're ashamed, and about 75% say that the response of the church has really not lived up to the gravity of that report's findings. It put the number of children abused as high as 330,000. Now, this summit lasts until next Monday, and one of the big things to watch out for is whether or not they decide to pay reparations to those victims, which was something that was recommended by that landmark report.
And Alison, you're taking us to a different kind of controversy now in New Zealand, and a competition for Bird of the Year in a flap Because the winner is, in fact, not a bird.
People squeaking about, Stephen, because the winner of this competition was a bat. To be more specific, it was a long-tailed bat, one of New Zealand's only native land mammals. Now, you might be wondering, why was a bat even in the running in this bird competition in the first place? Well, the New York Times explains that the conservation charity that organizes this annual vote included New Zealand's 2 native bat species to raise awareness that they are critically endangered. Now, it did seem to intrigue voters because more people than ever voted online in this competition. The New York Times reports that the bat's audacious win has been met with mixed responses. Some denounced a stolen election, but others saw it as a sign that if a bat can win Bird of the Year, then hey, anything is possible. I tend to agree with that more positive interpretation, but the New Zealand paper, the Dominion Post, had a somewhat philosophical response that I found intriguing. In their editorial, the paper writes that the bats winning Bird of the Year highlights a broader cultural trend of rejecting scientific facts. But in this case, they say, hey, why not? Let a bat be a bird. The paper also notes that this Bird of the Year contest is a wildly successful PR exercise, which is true. It makes headlines pretty much every year. Last year, it was the kakapo, a giant parrot that cannot fly, who was the big winner.
God, it looks like we're all in the running, potentially, for Bird of the Year.
I know, right?
Next year.
Stephen, voting for you next year.
Get our entries in now. Alison Sargent with a look through the international papers. Thank you very much for that. You're watching France 24. Stay with us. We'll have the latest news headlines after this short break.